Did General Motors truly believe it could shut down an entire Canadian plant, take billions in public support, abandon more than 1,200 workers, and walk back to Detroit as if nothing had happened? Did they genuinely think the economic and political fallout would never touch them? Or did GM's leadership have that moment, one cold, late October morning, when they realized they had made a mistake so big that even Detroit couldn't shield them? Because what happened next stunned the auto world more than any national security threat ever had. On October 21st, 2025, GM announced a full, permanent teardown of operations at the Kami plant in Ingersoll, Ontario. Not a pause, not a temporary suspension, a complete end. The Bright Drop electric van line was shut down. More than 1,200 employees were laid off permanently. The plant had already been idle since May, leaving a town of just 14,000 people struggling to survive. 3 days later, Ottawa did something no one expected. Before we proceed, if you believe companies that receive Canadian taxpayer money must honor their commitments, please subscribe to Maple States. We're pushing to 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us continue reporting on stories that matter. Ottawa did not send polite warnings. It did not issue diplomatic statements. It reacted like a country that had been betrayed by a trusted partner. Within 72 hours, federal officials forced GM executives into emergency legal consultations. Canada cut nearly 25% of GM's duty-free import quota. Overnight, every US-made GM vehicle entering the Canadian market became subject to a 25% retaliatory tariff. Stellantis was hit even harder, its duty-free privileges slashed by 50% after shifting Jeep production to Illinois. This wasn't anger, it was a strategy. To understand Canada's move, you have to go back. In 2022, GM made a promise. Ontario and Ottawa poured billions into modernizing CAMI, converting it into Canada's first large-scale EV plant. Bright Drop was marketed as a generational investment, jobs for decades, supply chain growth, a foundation for Canada's clean energy economy. GM accepted every dollar. Then, in April 2025, production was suddenly suspended. GM blamed weak demand and promised a partial restart in May. Workers believed them and held on. But May brought a complete shutdown instead. More than 1,200 workers were dismissed. No clarity, no timeline. Summer passed in silence. Detroit gave no answers. Families burned through savings while uncertainty became a daily burden. This was supposed to be a flagship EV hub, crucial to North America's future auto strategy. Instead, GM took the money, took the subsidies, and walked away. That's when Canada activated one of its newest and most powerful economic tools, the Auto Diminution Framework. The name may sound technical, but the effect is simple. Vehicles built in the United States face a 25% tariff when entering Canada, unless the manufacturer maintains active production and investment inside Canada. If they do, they are exempt. It's discipline attached to privilege, a promise attached to access. GM didn't keep its promise, so its access was reduced immediately. On October 23rd, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne and Industry Minister Mélanie Joly issued a joint declaration stating that GM and Stellantis had acted contrary to their commitments to Canadian workers. The message was unmistakable. You breached your agreements. Now you face the consequences. From that moment forward, every GM vehicle built in the US and sold in Canada landed with a 25% tariff attached. A model costing $45,000 to build arrived in Canada at roughly $56,000. Dealerships across Michigan and Ohio panicked. Customers walked away. Inventory sat untouched. Meanwhile, competitors importing from Europe faced only standard tariffs, nothing extra. GM had backed itself into a corner. While the corporate fallout was chaotic, the human cost was devastating. Picture a single mother in Ingersoll who spent 12 years on the line, 2 kids, a mortgage, health benefits tied to that job. In May, she's told the shutdown is temporary. By October, it's permanent. She calls GM's HR department looking for answers. None come. Meanwhile, groceries are more expensive, inflation is biting, and rent hasn't dropped $1. That is the reality behind every corporate promise broken. And this is why Joly's next move sent shockwaves through the industry. She issued a direct ultimatum to Stellantis, short, cold, unapologetic, reminding them of their legally binding obligation to maintain Canadian production. Failure would lead to clawbacks of federal funding. GM received an identical warning. Joly then convened an urgent meeting with Unifor, the Ontario government, and GM executives. The message was clear. You have 15 days to present a real production plan for CAMI. Not slogans, not vague commitments. A concrete plan with timelines and accountability. This wasn't political theater. Canada had already proven it was willing to enforce its rules. What happened next caught Detroit completely off guard. Within 3 weeks of the tariff reduction, Ford quietly reconsidered its Canadian investment plans. Stellantis removed its Canadian CEO, an unmistakable internal shakeup. GM reached out to Ontario to explore a return to Ingersoll, an indirect admission that their decision had backfired. Supply chain analysts immediately recalculated the economics. If GM continued paying the 25% tariff, its imported vehicles would become 15 to 20% more expensive long-term. If Stellantis lost half its advantages, its margins would shrink dramatically. Suddenly, maintaining production in Canada looked cheaper than absorbing permanent penalties. For years, companies believed they could leverage Canada, take subsidies, move production, and face no consequences. That era ended instantly. This isn't anti-business policy. It's pro-worker sovereignty, and it's changing the entire North American auto landscape. Global firms are watching closely. Boeing, Intel, major pharmaceutical companies, energy giants, all now understand one thing. Canada enforces its commitments. Honor your investment. Hire Canadians, keep your promises, and you benefit. Break them, and the consequences activate automatically. The Ingersoll plant is no longer just a local story. It is a symbol of a deeper question. Are Canadian workers truly protected? Does Canada negotiate from strength or from fear? And is this government willing to stand firm when corporations walk away? It appears the answer is yes. GM has 15 days to deliver a credible plan. If they do, the tariffs may be reversed. If they don't, the penalties stay. No exceptions, no appeals. For the first time in decades, the balance of power in Canada's auto industry has shifted. And as we watch these next steps unfold, one thing is certain. GM thought it could walk away without consequence. They were wrong.